Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to get into the really incredible history of New York City.
Yeah, it's quite a story.
It really is. We'll look at how it went from, this tiny Dutch trading post to the huge global center it is now, culture, finance, everything.
Right.
And our mission, like always in these deep dives, is to pull out the key stuff from our sources so you get a solid understanding of NYC's amazing and sometimes pretty surprising journey, a bit of a shortcut to being well-informed.
A wild journey, definitely, full of twists, turns, and incredible resilience. That word keeps coming up.
Resilience, exactly. So let's trace that path from the very beginning right up to, well, the powerhouse we see today. Okay, so let's unpack the absolute start. Before it was even New York, what was this place like when Europeans first showed up?
Okay, so we need to go back early 17th century, 1609 specifically. That's when Henry Hudson, an Englishman actually, but sailing for the Dutch, came into the harbor.
New York Harbor, as we know it now.
Exactly. And the Dutch, well, they immediately saw potential.
Yeah.
Big time. I mean, look at that natural harbor.
Yeah.
The river access. It was perfect for trade.
A prime spot.
Definitely.
Oh.
So by 1624, they set up a settlement, New Amsterdam, right on the southern tip of Manhattan Island.
New Amsterdam. It sounds almost quaint, but what was it actually like living there then? Can you paint a picture?
Quaint probably isn't the right word. Think scrappy, a scrappy little trading post. The Dutch West India Company ran the show, and their main focus, furs. Trading furs with local Native American tribes like the Lenape.
Okay.
But what's really interesting, and our sources highlight this, is how diverse it was, like right from the get-go.
Diverse how?
Well, it wasn't just Dutch people. You had English, French, Africans, some free, some enslaved, all kind of mixed together pretty early on. This wasn't really planned, it just sort of happened because of the trade.
So that melting pot idea started way back then.
Way back. They really set a foundation. But yeah, conditions were rough. Muddy streets, basic houses, and the fort they built was, well, more symbolic than sturdy. Didn't offer much real protection.
Right, a far cry from the city we know. So then the English arrive in 1664, and the takeover was surprisingly peaceful. Why wasn't there a bigger fight for such a valuable place?
It is surprising, yeah. There was this guy, Peter Stuyvesant, the governor, famous for his peg leg. He came in 1647 and did try to, whip the place into shape, built walls, tried to organize things.
Okay, so he tried to make it defensible.
He did. But when the English warships actually sailed into the harbor in 64, well, the Dutch garrison was small. And a lot of the people living there weren't even Dutch. They didn't feel much loyalty to the Dutch West India Company, which frankly hadn't always treated them great.
So they weren't really invested in fighting for the company.
Pretty much. So they surrendered. Didn't put up much of a fight at all. And New Amsterdam became New York, named for the Duke of York. The English also promised fair treatment, respected property rights, which probably helped smooth things over.
Interesting. So that quiet handover really set the stage for the next phase.
It really did. Growth under the British.
So New York is now English. How did it change? How did it evolve under British rule leading up to the Revolution?
Well, it grew pretty steadily through the 18th century. It became a really important commercial hub, a bustling port city. You had merchants trading all sorts of things, grain, lumber, rum, you name it, connecting the colonies to the wider world.
So trade was booming.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the population grew along with it. You start seeing more permanent buildings, stone houses, churches. King's College was founded, which of course is Columbia University today. It was really starting to feel like a proper colonial city.
Okay, and this leads us right into a period where things get really intense, the American Revolution. How did that whole conflict play out in New York?
Oh, massively. New York was absolutely central, a huge strategic prize. The British captured the city in 1776, right after the Battle of Brooklyn. That was actually the largest battle of the entire war.
Wow, the largest battle.
Yeah, and the British held on to New York for pretty much the whole war. It became their main base of operations, their headquarters in North America.
So life must have been incredibly difficult.
Extremely difficult. Parts of the city burned down in major fires. There were constant clashes between loyalists who support the British and patriots. And something really grim our sources mention is the British prison ships in the harbor.
Prison ships.
Yeah, these awful, overcrowded ship hulks where they captured American soldiers. Conditions were horrific. Disease was rampant. More Americans actually died on those ships than in all the war's battles combined.
That's staggering. And the city itself was mostly loyalist, you said.
Largely, yes. It served as the British stronghold, a safe haven for loyalists fleeing from other areas. So it was a very tense place throughout the war.
And then comes the end of the war. Evacuation Day. That must have been a huge deal.
A massive celebration. When the British finally sailed away in 1783, New Yorkers were ecstatic. But here's a really fascinating fact that comes up. After the war, New York City actually served as the first capital of the United States.
The first U.S. capital before Washington, D.C.
Yep, from 1785 to 1790, George Washington was inaugurated right there on Wall Street. It shows even then, New York had this knack for being right in the middle of everything important.
That's incredible. Okay, let's shift gears. The 19th century, this is where New York really transforms, right? From that important port city into something much bigger. How did that explosion happen?
Yeah, the 19th century is just phenomenal growth. Our sources point to two really key things: the Erie Canal and immigration.
The Erie Canal. Tell us about that.
Okay, completed in 1825 is this massive engineering project connecting the Hudson River and therefore New York City's port all the way to the Great Lakes, which meant suddenly New York had direct access to the resources and markets of the entire American interior. It became the undisputed gateway for goods, the effect on the economy, on trade through the port. It was just explosive.
An economic explosion. Okay, so the goods are flowing, but you mentioned immigration as the other key factor. That's the human side of the story. Right?
Exactly. All that economic opportunity acted like a giant magnet. You had waves upon waves of immigrants coming. First, huge numbers of Irish escaping the potato famine, then Germans seeking opportunity, and later on, Italians, Eastern European Jews, Poles, Russians, just pouring into the city.
Where do they arrive? Ellis Island is the famous one.
This island came later, yeah. Before that, it was mainly Castle Garden at the tip of Manhattan.
Yeah.
But the numbers were just staggering. One source mentioned that by the mid-1800s, something like over half the city's population was foreign-born.
Over half. That's amazing.
It is. And they brought incredible energy, labor, culture. They literally built the city in many ways. But the conditions they faced were often incredibly harsh.
Right, you hear about the tenements. What was that actually like for people arriving? Must have been a shock after dreaming of America.
Oh, it was grim for many. Really grim. Imagine tiny, dark apartments, often with no proper plumbing, no ventilation, just crammed with families. Sometimes multiple families in one small space.
Unsanitary. Dangerous.
Absolutely. Disease spread easily. The Lower East Side became particularly notorious for these conditions. It was a really tough existence. But, it wasn't all grim. This era also saw huge steps forward.
Like what?
Well, the city implemented the 1811 grid plan. That's why Manhattan has that iconic numbered street layout. Super practical for managing growth. And crucial infrastructure got built, like the Croton Aqueduct, bringing fresh, clean water into the city for the first time. That was massive for public health.
Okay, so planning and infrastructure trying to keep up with the growth.
Trying to, yeah. And you also see the beginnings of major cultural institutions, museums, theaters popping up, signs of a city becoming more than just a place of commerce.
But with all that growth, all those people packed together, different groups, there must have been serious conflicts too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The rapid growth created huge social tensions. A really stark example, or their sources detail, are the draft riots in 1863 during the Civil War.
The draft riots, what were they about?
It started as a protest against the military draft, which allowed wealthy people to pay to avoid service. But it quickly exploded into these incredibly violent, really ugly riots fueled by class resentment and horrific racial prejudice, particularly targeting African Americans. It was a brutal, terrifying few days for the city.
Wow. So incredible dynamism, but also deep divisions.
Exactly. And alongside all this social turmoil, this is also when New York really cements its financial dominance.
Yeah.
Wall Street, the New York Stock Exchange, they become central to the American and increasingly the global economy.
Okay, so the city is growing, changing, facing huge challenges, but also becoming this financial powerhouse. Let's fast forward, the 20th century. When does New York really step into the role of the global icon we think of today? That skyline, that energy?
The early 20th century is absolutely pivotal for that. That's when the skyline we recognize starts to take shape. You get these amazing early skyscrapers like the Flatiron Building, and then later icons like the Chrysler Building, the Empire State Building. They literally changed the face of the city.
And change the idea of what a city could even look like.
Totally. And just as important, maybe even more so for daily life, was the subway. The first lines opened in 1904.
Yeah.
That was a complete game changer.
How so?
It connected the boroughs, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Queens, with Manhattan in a way that just wasn't possible before. It allowed people to live further out and still work in the center. It really knitted the whole massive area together into one true metropolis.
So the city is physically transforming, becoming more unified.
Right. And culturally, it was just electric. You have the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s, this incredible flourishing of black art, literature, music. Jazz is everywhere. Broadway is booming. New York becomes this irresistible magnet for artists, writers, musicians, thinkers, anyone with a dream, really.
The Roaring Twenties image.
Exactly. But then, of course, comes the crash. The Great Depression hit New York incredibly hard. Massive unemployment, poverty. It was a really tough time that tested the city severely.
So how did it pull through that and then go on to become even more influential globally?
Well, leadership mattered. You had figures like Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia in the 30s and 40s. He was this dynamic, very popular figure who really pushed for reforms, fought corruption, and used federal New Deal money for huge public works projects.
Like what kind of project?
Parks, bridges, highways, public housing. Things that not only provided jobs during the Depression, but also fundamentally improved the city's infrastructure for the long haul. Robert Moses was also central here, though his legacy is more complex.
Okay, so rebuilding, reforming.
And then after World War II, New York's global status just skyrockets. The big symbolic moment, the one that really seals the deal, is when the United Nations decides to build its headquarters there in 1952.
Ah, the UN headquarters. That's huge.
It really cemented New York's position. So by the mid-20th century, you've got the whole package: the undisputed financial capital with Wall Street, a global cultural powerhouse with its museums, galleries, theaters, and publishing, and now the home of international diplomacy, the world capital.
Okay, bringing us closer to today. New York's story in the late 20th and early 21st centuries hasn't exactly been smooth sailing either. You had the fiscal crisis in the 70s, crime waves, and then the unimaginable trauma of 9/11. How does the city keep bouncing back, keep reinventing itself?
You know, I think we circled back to it earlier. Resilience. It sounds like a cliche, but for New York, it really does seem to be its superpower.
Yeah.
Take the 1970s fiscal crisis. The city was near bankruptcy, crime was high, people were leaving. But it clawed its way back.
And 9/11.
9/11 was obviously devastating, on a scale hard to comprehend. But the way the city responded, the rebuilding wasn't just physical, like with the Freedom Tower and the incredibly moving 9/11 memorial. It was also an emotional and spiritual rebuilding, a demonstration of that collective spirit.
And today, it's still a major force.
Absolutely. Still a world leader in finance, obviously, but also huge in tech now, fashion, media, the arts. And you see constant change. The neighborhoods in Brooklyn and Queens that were maybe overlooked before are now these incredibly vibrant cultural centers.
And the diversity aspect continues.
More than ever, our sources talk about over 800 languages being spoken in New York today. That constant influx of people, ideas, energy from all over the world.
Yeah.
That's what keeps it dynamic. That's what fuels the reinvention.
So if you had to boil down this whole epic journey from Henry Hudson to today into one core insight, what would that be?
I think it's that unique ability New York has to absorb massive change, huge challenges, even catastrophes, and somehow evolve while staying true to its fundamental identity. And that identity is, it's basically a place built on ambition,
Yeah.
a place where people from everywhere can come to chase a dream, no matter how hard it gets. That's baked into its DNA.
That really captures it. A place built on dreams and hustle, constantly revving. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive through New York City's incredible history. We've covered a lot of ground, from a small Dutch outpost to a global superpower.
It's been fascinating.
It really has. So here's a final thought for you, our listener, based on everything we've discussed from our sources. Given its history of boom and bust, conflict and creativity, diversity and division, what do you think is the single most enduring characteristic that lets New York constantly reinvent itself again and again? Something to mull over.
Yeah, it's a story that's definitely not finished yet. Urban evolution in action.
Absolutely. Our aim with this deep dive, as always, was to give you that shortcut to being well-informed, drawing out the key insights from the sources. We hope you found it valuable and that you keep exploring the stories shaping our world.